Today on Cure Your Fatigue with Morley Robbins, Morley welcomes celebrity chef James Barry. James has been a significant advocate of eating organ meats because of their incredible nutrient density. But he's gone beyond producing incredible organ meat dishes for his celebrity customers. He has created a company called Pluck Seasonings, which incorporates a number of different organs in their freeze-dried form to create incredible seasonings. This is a fascinating discussion, and I hope you really enjoy it.
I'm just delighted to have a chance to spend some time with you. As you can imagine, what I'm most interested in finding out, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, but how did the picky eater become the plucky seasoner? Because I know there's a real story there to
Yeah.
explain the journey. And I think you have a very unique perspective on life. And I think our community will really enjoy hearing how you made this evolution and your professional expression to go from cooking to making sure people are getting the nutrients that they need. So really, it's a great journey that you've been on.
Well, thank you for helping to amplify it. It is funny to this day, my mom still is in denial that she has a chef for a son because I grew up in a household where we knew
Right,
dinner was ready because the smoke detector went off.
right, right. I
So
know.
that's like, right away, it was like, this was not a foodie household at all.
Yeah,
I was just talking with my brother the other night, reminiscing because we lost our father a year ago. And so we were just kind of commenting and talking about our childhood. And I said, can you remember what foods we ate every week? And we literally could recount the foods because we ate the
yeah,
exact same foods
right.
every week.
Yeah,
Pizza on Friday, Chinese on Sunday, like chicken,
sure.
shake and bake chicken. You remember shake and bake,
No, of course. Yeah,
right?
right.
I
Yeah.
mean, like all this stuff
Well,
that was
that's an
just,
early form of pluck, right?
yeah. That's funny because I was thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, that's basically like wheat and seasonings, It's like, that's interesting. Um,
Yeah,
but ultimately I I embraced my love of cooking,
yeah,
and I did not embrace it to be a foodie, to be someone who was going to own a restaurant. I truly did it because I wanted to help people with their health.
yeah,
I saw my own journey with my diet, and I recognized that I needed help. And I
yeah,
recognized very early on that um, the real mover is the thing that isn't a trend, and that's real food. Real food is
mhm,
not a trend. And
that's right.
and this very well. It's like those of us that have been in this business, as long as we have, we've seen trends come and go. But this is the one that never budges. It's like we
Mhm,
always come back to neutral with real food, or it's our default. And so I was just very cognizant of the fact that we're continuing to get these modes of communication that are confusing us, where we
mhm,
have all these influencers that we don't necessarily, they're just talking heads, but they're all spouting different things, and it's confusing what we
right,
ancestrally know, what we instinctively know. Because if you think about it, our homo sapien body is hundreds of thousands of years old. It's the
right.
biological mechanisms were developed that long ago, right? But
Yeah,
these frankenfoods that we're being marketed to and that are now part of our diet, they're only what, 150 years old, not even that, I think.
right. That's right. Yeah.
So it's a huge disparity.
And that I was listening to one of your other interviews, and I loved where you were. It was I'm trying to remember the actual interview, but in any event, you made this connection between what I eat and how I feel, and that a lot of people don't realize that, as you noted in the interview, and that's really where the rubber hits the road, is getting people
Absolutely.
to recognize that. In a confession, um, you're talking to your antithesis. I'm like, you don't want me in a kitchen, right? And and my wife, Dr. Liz, who got me started on this journey 16, 17 years ago, she probably could compete with you. She was a gifted chef of her own right, no formal training, but three of her sons are really gifted cooks and chefs. And she raised them to play in the kitchen while she was cooking. So it's a very interesting, simple model. But one of her sons was visiting, and he turned to me and said, Morley, why don't you cook? You know, here I am, this gifted nutritionist teaching people about minerals and stuff like that, but I don't cook. I don't take the time to prepare.
Well,
I
you
said,
haven't had to. You had a great
no,
chef in the house.
I know, right? But thank you for pointing that out. But I said, you know, Ambrose, I'm afraid of making a mistake. And he burst out laughing. He said, Morley, you can't make a mistake in the kitchen.
Yeah, I always
know that.
show that to people. Yeah, like, you know, if you have an apple, you cut the apple, it's still an apple. You
Right.
can't cut it wrong. It's still an apple. But it really is. It's so lovely to. I get my kids in the kitchen as well. Our 13-year-old is now not only supporting the household cooking, so she has nights where she does the cooking, but she's
Wow.
also doing the one thing that I have found is one of the biggest movers of health that most people don't do. So I hope everyone's ears are, are perked,
Right.
because it's meal planning. She actually is involved in the meal planning every week.
Cool.
And I gotta say, when you meal plan, you don't make impulsive buys. You only buy what's on your list. You know, you
That's
meal
right.
plan for the week. You build it around your schedule, not some random lofty idea, but you build it around your schedule. If you have a busy day, then I recommend you do like a slow cooker day where you put this food in the slow cooker in the morning. It's ready for you in the evening. But you can figure out what is the meal I'm cooking that day based on my schedule, make your grocery list. And then when you go to that grocery store, you stick to the list. And usually there's no Oreos on that list. There's no Doritos, right? Because those are impulsive buys.
That's right. Sure. Exactly. Well, you'll get a kick out of this. My daughter, Lizzie, who went to BC, Boston College, and
Great school.
great school. Absolutely. We were having a conversation, we'll call it a conversation, about what she was eating. And I could tell she was kind of straying from the reservation. I said, Lizzie, what you really need, she was talking about the labels that she was buying. I said, well, tell me what it says. And then I worked the conversation over to real food. I said, so what I think is going to be important for you is to begin to incorporate more real food. And we got into a little bit of a tussle about what is real food. And finally, out of frustration, she said, Dad, what's the label look like on real food? I said, Lizzie, thank you. There is no label on real food.
Yep.
And she's like, oh, I get it now. And now she's really very accomplished chef in her own right. But at that moment in college, she was struggling. She wasn't quite sure what she was supposed to eat. And I think a lot of young adults go through that period. I think it's really hard for them.
Absolutely. I think even not so young adults are struggling these days. I mean, I think it's very confusing. You know, the things that we grew up being taught are being talked about differently now, particularly just even within this 1 year that we're in right now. Like, you know, animal fats are finally being talked about differently. We have seed oils being talked about differently. We have sugars finally being talked about differently. There, even vaccines being talked about differently, right? Like suddenly the discussion is so different. And I think, you know, the way I talk to people about even cooking is similarly of how I would talk about diets. So with cooking, I say, you know, we think just because we eat that we're supposed to love or know how to cook.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily go together. Just, you know, that really it's not about you have, and key word is have. You don't have to love cooking. You just need to figure out what works best for your body. And what I'm always telling people is, you know, we tend to get very heady about what is the diet I'm supposed to follow. And we kind of get a little bit on a soapbox, right? We think that the diet that I'm eating is the right diet for everyone. But I'm always like, you know, there's one person in that relationship with you that never lies, that's never going to steer you wrong. And it's your body. So no matter what your head tells you should be eating, if your body starts showing symptoms from what you're eating, then going back to what you said at the beginning of how what we eat affects our health, then your body is communicating to you, hey, that's not working for me. So just using it as an example, in no way condemning it, but just using it as an example. But like, let's say a plant-based eater, and I met many of them in my career. A lot of them would be very specific about, this is how I'm going to eat. And then I would look at their body, and their body would be inflamed. They would be hugely overweight. They would have skin issues going on. And I'm like, well, that's an indication of nutrient deficiency and potentially, like, that your body's not agreeing with the foods you're choosing. And we need to listen to our bodies.
I'm curious, what was the light bulb moment for you where you discovered real food? I'm sure it was a process, but there had to have been a lightning bulb moment when you realized how important this was to your well-being.
As you know, everyone in the health field has that moment, right? Everybody.
Yeah.
Mine was, I was just out of college.
Mm-hmm.
I had joined this theater group actually in Massachusetts, in Williamstown, Massachusetts. And I was about 2 weeks in. So I was living on the West Coast. I had flown to the East Coast. I was 2 weeks on the East Coast, away from my family, barely 21. And I got a kidney stone. Now, I did not know at the time it was a kidney stone. I was just in immense pain. Anyone that's never had a kidney stone, it is probably the closest you've had.
Giving birth to a
giving birth for a man. For a man, it's the closest we can get to giving birth, and yet it's still not that close. But it tells you how painful.
Oh no, it's way worse than giving birth. Come on.
I can't say that. My wife will kill me. But I got a kidney stone, and luckily, and I truly mean luckily, because had the doctor said any other answer, I don't think I would have gotten that lightning moment. But after it passed, I said, how was this caused? How do I prevent this from ever happening again? That's how painful it was. And he said, well, what have you been eating and drinking? And that was literally the first. And I said, I should say my answer because I think it's fine. I said, well, I've been drinking root beer and eating pizza. And he said, well, are you drinking water? And I said, well, isn't there water in root beer?
Good comeback. That's
right.
Great. Yeah.
And he said, no, you have to drink water on its own. And that was the lightning bolt. And from that day forward, I started carrying water around, and I started to really think about, what I eat affects my health.
That's beautiful. Well, but mine was, again, I grew up in a very sickly family and worked in hospitals and the healthcare system for 32 years. I was an allopathic brat. I mean, I just, and when I developed frozen shoulder, friends told me at a health food store, they told me to go see Dr. Liz. And I said, I don't do witchcraft. And I sent me some supplements, and it didn't do anything. And I went back, and the owner was there that day, and she said, Morley, we love you. Go see Dr. Liz. Of course, Dr. Liz is now my wife. But she used this. Yeah, I know. So it was an amazing experience.
It's voodoo. You do realize she put voodoo on you that day, clearly, if you married her.
Right? Thank you for confirming it. But when we were getting to know each other, my birthday rolled around, and she said, I can't be with you on your birthday, but I think would be a great present for you is to go hear Tom Cowan, who's a physician.
Yep, I know Tom. He's fantastic.
Yeah. And she said, and this is what I heard, hear him talk about the Western A Price Society.
Yep.
And it was at a local school, and I couldn't find a place to park, and I was getting increasingly heated about that, and finally found a place to park, got in, and it was a transformational moment to hear Tom talk about what the ancestral diet is all about. And you've been there, you understand that. But that was this light bulb moment back in, it must have been 2013, 2014. It was an incredible experience that changed my life. And then I became a chapter leader in Chicago. It was just, but it was just this total immersion to find out what's really going on inside our body. And the phrase that Dr. Liz used after she healed my shoulder, she made a reference to the innate healer. the healer within.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I thought, I didn't say anything. I said, well, if there's an innate healer, I want to find out who that is. And that's what I've been researching for 16 years now.
It's incredible. I learned about Weston A. Price when I went to culinary school. That was in 2000 and I want to say 7, I think.
Yeah.
And that's when I learned about, really started to dive into that world of Weston A. Price's work, Pottinger's cats, all of that, that nutritional background. But that's also where I learned about organ meats. And what's
Absolutely.
fascinating is that despite learning about the importance of these foods, despite learning how really they are Mother Nature's multivitamin, I still didn't really know how to incorporate it all. And if anyone that's kind of gone down the Weston A. Price rabbit hole, they have that cookbook. That's what they're very known for.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
the cookbook is fantastic, but, and this is the big but, it's very challenging to go through. It's not intuitive. You have to read it. You have to, they're forcing you to really delve into the world. And
Exactly.
for most people, that isn't what they're used to with a cookbook. And so it can be I tend to find it's one of those things, some of these principles for the middle of like for the diehards, of course, the people that get sick, they
Right.
follow it.
Exactly.
But it's the people that aren't sick, that are just brought into this world. Those are the ones that they buy the book and they put it on their shelves, but they don't really ever incorporate it.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of been my mission of like, okay, how do I help people truly incorporate these foods? Because what's happening in our world is that we are slaughtering an animal, let's say a cow. And I've talked to slaughterhouses. I've got one specifically in Wyoming, and I got this confirmation about what I'm about to share. But basically, when they go to kill that animal, they're only utilizing about 50% of that animal. The other 50% is, in more cases than not, just getting thrown out. And it's all dependent on if that slaughterhouse is set up to incorporate more of the animal. Now, more and more are trying to, but more than not are very antiquated. They're very kind of like, this is what we do. We're not going to change. And so they don't utilize the whole animal. And so what's happening, though, is that a lot of those organ meats are part of the discarded pieces of the animal. But they're also, as you know, some of the most nutrient dense parts. And so then what's happening? So we're disregarding some of the most nutritious parts of the animal. We're then eating the other 50%, the meat, but then we're still nutrient deficient. And then what do? Is we're turning to an entirely created industry, the supplement industry, that's designed to fill in the gaps that we're not getting from our day to day. But yet, to me, that's the definition of madness. I'm like, well, we should be eating the whole animal first before we disregard, before we jump to the conclusion of like, well, I need to take these supplements. First, let's get the nutrition from the animal and then get tested and see, do you still need more stuff? Because it's, of course, modern living, stressful lives may require some more support. But we're disregarding the real food vitamins.
Yeah, and I think very well said. And I think the challenge we've got now is maybe in our great-grandfather's day or our grandfather's day, it was more predictable about what was the nutrient content of that animal. I think now we are hard pressed to say what's really there. And obviously a big difference between commercial organic farming. It's very unsettling to know that they've now circumnavigated the sanity by calling glyphosate an organic.
Yeah, very frustrating.
And so I think the challenge now is the nutrient tables, at least as I understand it, and maybe you know better, James, they haven't been updated for 50, 60, 70 years. And so we're basing food choices on old information, and the feeding practices are very different today than they were 50 years ago. I think that's the added twist to this whole process is how do we know what we're getting in the way of food? That's what leaves me awake at night as well.
It is great question to ask. And I would also challenge, though, and I'm only challenging not because I disagree, but more because I think we have to. Because so the question is, am I really like, is the diet I'm choosing really giving back to me in the way that I think it is?
Exactly.
And
Right.
I would offer that most likely it isn't. And that's
Mhm.
because there are so many factors to the chain, the agricultural, the meat industry that we don't understand. They're not transparent. They're not clear. For example, a lot of people think, and you were alluding to this a second ago, a lot of people think, well, just because I'm buying organic legumes or organic grains, that means there's no glyphosate on it. And that's not true. Sometimes what happens is they will grow them organically and then put them in the field to dry, and they'll spray glyphosate over them to dry them.
3 or 4 times.
Right. So
Yeah, right.
here you had something that was grown organically, but now it has glyphosate. So, and most people don't know this. So I would offer that, okay, let's assume that the food we're eating is not what we think. Okay. Because that's the life we live. So this is where I would challenge people is maybe it's not just about the food choices we make, but maybe it's also about our mindset and our state of mind as we eat it. And what I mean by that is, if anyone has ever read, there's a water book out there. I want to call it The Way of Water. I think that's what it's called. But it talked about in this water, it talked about toxic water versus spring water, and these are real experiments that happen where they put some monks around a toxic lake, and they prayed, and the lake was not able to form crystals before, and then after the prayer it was. Now, no matter what anyone believes religiously, politically, I don't care, it doesn't matter. The point is that food is water. And so that means that energy can flow through that. And we all know that when we are in a stress state, we do not digest food properly. We just don't. We do not.
No, we don't.
It's a fact. So I want to offer, okay, let's do the best we can and eat food that is an ingredient versus has ingredients. Let's do the best we can of eating food that is as close to nature as possible, like that has flavors that are found in nature, that is as nutrient dense as possible, raised properly, humanely, all those kind of things. But then let's focus as much as we can on taking a breath and relaxing and not worrying about the granular things, but really just focus on what is the outcome you want in terms of this food nourishing your body, and just relax your body into it, because there's always going to be things we cannot control. So let's focus on the things we can control, which is our own state.
Yeah. No, very, very well said. Because you can analyze it to death.
Oh God. And we're in that world right now, right? I mean, things are getting more analyzed now than I think at any point in history.
Absolutely. Our ancestors didn't worry about their food the way we do. They don't microanalyze it the way we do.
And it's causing havoc. There's I'm sure you talk about this a lot with your group about the gut flora. When you're stressed, that gets depleted, like that gets affected. So you cannot digest food as properly. So there's so much to when we overanalyze, when we overthink things. It's like, I'm always like, look, let's just focus on our humanity first. Do the best you can. And I always tell people, look, if you can't afford grass-fed and it's going to stress you out to purchase that 100% grass-fed animal, then yes, just pick the conventional one and try and try to do things to it that are going to help, like make it as nutritious as possible. Maybe add certain herbs to it when you're cooking to help, like for example, like oregano is a it basically helps to clean out things, right? So you can add certain herbs, anti-parasitics, things like that. You can do things, cook it in a way that carry aromas that really, relax you and make your body feel safe. But I think the key is that by focusing on real food, we really are we're telling our body, hey, I want you to feel safe. This is food you can recognize. When we get those Franken foods, those ultra processed foods in our diet, our bodies are immediately told, oh, be on alert, because it doesn't understand the food.
And I think part of the rationale for the root cause protocol is to honor what you've just said. Do the best you can, but there are very specific nutrients that the body needs in order to function. And again, I came at this with a complete naivete. I mean, I'd been a biology major undergrad. I wanted to go to medical school, but that was more of a quixotic quest than a real dream. I only got rejected by 18 medical schools, 12 in one day. So there's no collusion between these schools, right?
Jeez.
But thank God I did.
Their loss.
Yeah, right. Ben Edwards said it's actually a gift that you didn't go because you didn't get indoctrinated.
Yeah,
So
there's truth. There's truth to that.
I learned to ask different questions, but what I came to realize is what's missing is energy.
Mm.
The whole model, the whole medical model is based on enemies, whether it's a pathogen or a heavy metal or a toxin of some sort. And I said, well, what about energy? And that's what the immune system runs on, is energy. The immune system knows what to do if you give it energy. It's absolutely amazing.
Mm.
And so I think that's the magic. And when you think about the animal, as you're talking about, the 50% that gets thrown away, where do you think the highest concentration of mitochondria are in the animal? It's in the organs.
Yeah.
And the part that people don't realize is how mineral dense those organs are, because you got to have minerals to make energy. And so that your intuition has been serving you well, but it introduces a whole new paradigm of thinking. And so the phrase we use within the RCP is ignore the enemies, ignite the energy. And I think what I think is very unique and special about your products is that's exactly what they're doing. You're introducing in a very easy to use format. There's a very low barrier to resistance to just sprinkle food, right? But you're bringing it alive, which is amazing. And you're intensifying the energy production in the individual, which I think from my perspective, that's really what you're delivering. I'm delivering not just nutrition, I'm delivering energy. That's the key.
I love that. I've never thought of it that way, but I love that thought around it. Yeah, what I love about Pluck, which if anyone listening or watching doesn't know, it's an organ-based seasoning. So we took freeze-dried and powdered organ meats. We currently have 5 of them: liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas, all from grass-fed cows, 100% grass-fed cows. And we combine them with salt, Redmond real salt, and organic spices and herbs. And so what we are doing, to your point, is we're trying to say, look, I understand some of the hardest work people can do is changing their diet. Like, let's be honest, it's some of the hardest work.
Easier to change your religion.
Yeah, right. It's like, and people resist it so much. And that's why usually people don't make changes to their diet until either they've gotten sick or someone they love has gotten sick or died. And so what I'm trying to say is, I get it. So I'm trying to help you before you get sick. And so what I'm saying is, like, keep eating the exact same foods you're eating, but now just salt them with Pluck. And every time you do, you're getting the microdosing of those micronutrients, and you're getting them frequently because I want you to use it every time you eat. Right. And then that's cumulative effect. And I've personally found that the things that truly move my health needle and many of the people around me are the things that we do little amounts of daily. And I always use, like, toothbrush, brushing our teeth as an example. Right. Sure. If we had to brush our teeth for 2 hours a day, there would be a lot of funky teeth out there, because human nature does not support that trait. We don't want to do things like that for long periods of time. We want little movements that we can do either throughout the day or just once a day. And that's where we thrive. That's our sweet spot as humans. And if you think about it, if you go through your life and history, and most people will be able to identify even with what we experienced during COVID, when the emotions get high, when our regular routines get thrown off, what happens? We kind of default to like all the comfort things, comfort foods, drugs, anything that kind of helps us to, like, not be stressed or to check out. And so what I'm trying to do is say, look, if it's a seasoning and you can salt your food with it, then, and it's not only easy to apply, but it's delicious, then now we have circumvented anything that has to do with your emotions or the exterior, the life outside of you, the world life, that it's now we're making health as easy as just salt your food. You just salt your food. And now you're getting the benefits of, like you said, this energy that you probably were not getting otherwise.
Oh, absolutely true. And so what you've done is you've simplified the foundation. People can continue their diet. They can take it up a notch with your seasonings, which is beautiful. And then what we do is try to incorporate, but with very specific focus, target certain nutrients like copper and magnesium. The salt that you're using, we put it in what's called adrenal cocktails, along with real vitamin C, things like that. But that's what allows people to get to another level. Now here's a part that I think would be fun for you to experience. We're very focused on the dynamic between copper and iron, and most people don't know that they run the Earth is actually run by a 3-ring circus. It's copper, iron, and oxygen,
Mm.
and how well they get along, and they don't always get along. And I didn't know any of this. This is just for whatever reason I've had the fortitude and desire to read 10,000 articles, and I'm pretty good at remembering them too.
Wow.
That's a gift, and but my real gift is pattern recognition. I can connect dots pretty well. And one of the most important things for people to know about is that as we get older, we accumulate more iron. Most people don't know that. And this is a formula that iron biologists all over the world use to determine how much iron you have in your body. So, James, how old are you?
51 at this point.
51. All right. So I'm going to multiply 51 times 365, and that's how many milligrams of iron you have in your body. 18,600. Okay? You're designed for 5,000.
Hmm.
I've got 26,000 because I'm 72. And the key is the whole basis of what we're trying to do, and I think it would be a natural extension of your whole platform, is allow people to learn the importance of lowering their iron footprint and learn the importance of raising their copper footprint, which is what organ meats deliver. Because copper is the general and iron is the foot soldier.
Hmm.
And you don't need to be in the military to know who's important, right? And so when you have a multiple of almost 4 times the amount of iron that you should have, it will take a toll in your body. It begins to age organs. It ages metabolism. It ages the immune system. And that's the part that a lot of people don't understand as it relates to the aging process. So that the key is, and what's also in play, as you probably would know this, do you know when they started fortifying foods with iron? You know when that actually happened?
Wait, wasn't it with Kellogg's cereal?
No, it formally it's 1941
Mm.
during the dark days of the Second World War. And they started adding iron to the wheat flour in the UK, Canada, and the US. And then in 1969, the FDA wanted to increase the amount of iron 300%. And
300%.
20 scientists from around the world converged on Washington, D.C. and said, what are you trying to do? Kill people? And so in a magnanimous gesture, the FDA backed off and said, well, we'll just increase it 50%. Now food is fortified with 9 different forms of iron. 9 different forms. How many of them cause cancer?
Mm.
All 9. And so the beauty of your product is you're delivering nutrient-dense seasoning, the salts and the desiccated organ meats, most of it, what a really principal nutrient that's there is copper. And it's really important. And we don't need to get too deep into that. I just wanted to amplify the genius that you brought to the table and get people to be aware of the fact that there is an aging process. And it's not complicated. It's called iron accumulation. And it can easily be regulated and reversed, I would argue, with the proper incorporation of copper and the other nutrients we talk about within the RCP. Because what does iron do to the mitochondria? It kills them. It overwhelms them. Then you can't make energy. And what most people don't know is that the mitochondria have copper in the center. And it's an incredible design that very few people, especially practitioners, whether they're doctors or nutritionists or whatever, they don't know how the engine of the human being actually runs. It's absolutely fascinating when you get into it.
How does this interact then with the type of iron, the type of like what, because obviously sometimes when it's coming from fortified, it's that, laboratory made versus food based. And then how does it also mix with detoxification pathways?
You're a man after my own heart. So, I mean, I could go into a long harangue about it, but the bottom line is there's two types of iron, heme
and other.
Well, yeah, heme and non-heme. And heme is actually organic. It's coming from the animal.
Right.
And the body recognizes that. Oh, I know what that is. I can use that. And what's amazing is that the non-heme, inorganic, I don't quite recognize it. 95% of the research is devoted to helping people absorb that non-heme iron.
Interesting.
And where's all the politics now? Get away from the animals. Oh, the protein, animal fat. It's like, are you kidding? That's what, as you go back to your opening remarks, that's what we're designed from, going back to our ancient ancestors. And so there is a difference in these components of iron, but people aren't realizing how subtle this distinction is. And the other part that you're probably aware of, because you alluded to glyphosate, modern farming chemicals are very good at chelating minerals.
Yeah.
Especially copper. They seem to have an affinity for copper, and there are scientists. Don Huber would be one down at Purdue University who identified that glyphosate pulls copper out of the soil 1 billion times faster than it pulls magnesium and calcium. And so a number like that just goes over our head, right? A friend of mine said, Morley, there's 3 numbers, 1, 2, and a lot. But when you say 1 billion times faster, you say, well, I can't relate to that, so it can't be important. But in fact, it's really important, because the question that we all need to be thinking about is, how do we begin to make sure that the foods we're eating, the grass-fed foods that we're eating, really have the nutrients that they're supposed to have? I think that's where the real, if there's going to be a revolution, and I'm not a militant kind of guy, but I think we need to be setting standards for what does it mean to be organic, grass-fed, properly raised, or whatever the right language is, to make sure that we're getting what our body is designed to run with. That's where I think we're most challenged. And I really appreciate your point about let's relax, let's bless it, let's accept that we're doing the best we can. That's great wisdom. But we also have to, as you said, that the narrative has changed in the last year, in the last, 8 months, 9 months?
Yeah, not even a full year. Yeah.
Yeah, which is very refreshing.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
I think we have a long way to go, as you can well acknowledge. So I think that's important for people just to know this dynamic is. And you mentioned COVID a couple minutes ago. It was in April of 2020 was when I renamed what COVID stands for. So the COV stands for coppers vanished, and the ID stands for irons dysregulated. Soon as the general's not in the food, not in your body, iron takes off like a rocket, and that's where all the crisis is in the body.
You know, and there's so much value in, if anyone is, listening to any of this and feeling just desperate or disparate, just like, where do I start? And I really do, like, where I go is I say, well, just try to get as close to basics as possible. And some of the biggest movers are, getting that sunlight in the early morning, getting actual sunlight, getting up, regular hours, going to bed, early enough where you can get up early enough to experience that early sun, drinking fresh water, maybe putting a little salt in that water if you can, eating these foods that are real foods, that aren't fortified, that aren't, ultra processed. And then the one that I, like to add is making sure that you're in a joyful state, or around people that you love, or that, the people that inspire you, because you want to be as stress-free as possible. And then get some movement. Maybe after every time you eat, just go for a walk. It doesn't have to be complicated, but these little things, what's fascinating, and we've gotten this feedback even with Pluck, and it sounds like this is what your experience was too, is that as we make even one change, it inspires the next change. And then that inspires the next change. And suddenly we're steamrolling closer and closer towards more optimal health. So I'm just a big fan of, like, wherever you are, if you're feeling called to change, take that first step, because it's not about one day, it's about day one.
No, that's true. And we're very fussy. We only have about 12 or 13. We have stops and starts. We have a dozen stops, but the stops surprise people. Stop taking iron, stop taking calcium, stop taking ascorbic acid, stop taking vitamin D supplements. Get your A and D through cod oil. But then we have a dozen starts, and we could easily have 70 starts. I mean, you can imagine the pressure from all these different circles wanting to, well, what about this? But we haven't really changed the protocol in many, many years. But I think we're on the brink of, I think we have to incorporate Pluck as part of our protocol. Seriously, I'm not blowing smoke. I'm not speaking to the audience. I think that you have introduced a game-changing concept to take the stress out of making food nutritious. That's a gift. And to your genius, I salute, because that's what we need, is that kind of innovation.
Wow, thank you, Morley. I mean, as you know from your time in this industry, it's always, not everyone is ready, right? Not everyone is ready when you're ready. When you're ready to talk to them, that doesn't mean they're ready to listen. And so it's fascinating to me how many people have been so receptive to this product, and how many have immediately welcomed it into their kitchens and into their family's health plan. And I'm so grateful for that. And it's also equally surprising to me when people fight it, because I'm like, I don't understand. Like, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to get real food into you. Like, why are you fighting this?
I think we might just change the protocol name to root cause Pluctocol. So I'm just curious, I don't know what the progression of your business model has been, but what's your next phase of development? What's on the horizon? What are you anticipating in terms of your next area of opportunity for your business?
It's a great question. I appreciate you asking. I'm really interested in continuing to bring these very real, unadulterated foods. I mean, they're slightly adulterated, right? They're freeze dried and powdered, right? But they're still real food. Nothing's added to them. Nothing beyond just the freeze drying process is done to them. There's no fillers. There's no flow agents. Nothing, right? So my mission is to try to bring more of these foods to people in this easy format. So what we have down the pike right now, and actually should be coming out in 2025, is we have a brain product coming. So I'm going to try to get beef brain to people. And if anyone's concerned, we are sourcing from New Zealand, and New Zealand has never, ever had a mad cow disease issue. So
You know what causes mad cow?
yeah,
Lack of copper.
Oh, really? Oh, lack of copper specifically.
Absolutely. It's in the
Interesting.
literature. Yeah.
But
I was
so
thinking
New
you didn't
Zealand
know.
has never had an issue. So
Okay.
we're sourcing from very high quality, sources. But our goal is to try to help get brain back into the diet. And then eventually we're going to help to try to get even more parts of the animal. So we'll have a men's blend eventually that has the, uh, the
Right.
you know, the Rocky Mountain oysters, they call them.
Sure. Sure.
But and then we'll have
Absolutely.
a female blend that has some of the ovaries. And we're going to try to get more of that whole animal nutrition. And then we're going to also have other species lines. And so one of them that I'm extremely excited about is we are going to have a whole sardine line, meaning that we're taking the entire sardine,
Right.
skeleton, head, eyes,
Yep.
fillet, all of it. We're freeze drying it, we're powdering it, and we're going to make curry seasonings with that. So we're going to really make seasonings that are complementary to that fishy taste. So that way we're helping people to also get fish into their diet, and fish that are, lower in mercury or whatnot than others. But
Right. Sure.
and then we'll have other species, like we'll eventually do a poultry line, and we'll have the poultry organs as well. So we're really just trying to continue down that path of providing that whole animal nutrition to people in a format that's easy to apply to your life. And we're going to try to bring in the different species. So if there's someone that's like, well, I don't eat beef, well, no problem. Then here's the poultry line, here's the bison line, here's the sardine line. But we're going to get this real food into you, because too many people, as you know, are not eating these foods, and they're suffering for it.
Absolutely. Very, very true. Um, you'll get a kick out of this. When I was growing up, my mom was from the country, uh, and she was a good cook, but she wasn't a great cook. And but the smoke alarm can go off all that often. So there we go. I
You didn't
do
eat
remember.
hockey pucks like I did?
Yeah, I know, right? I remember one time when the flames were in the pan, I just ran from the living room, threw the pan out into the backyard, saved the day. But when I was little, I would come home from school and I'd say, "What's for dinner?" And my mom would say something, and I would ask the wrong question. I would ask, "Have we had that before?"
Uh-oh.
And my mom would lean down. She said, "Yes, Morley, and you loved it." And so this goes on, day by day, year by year. And I come home from school one time. I said, "What's for dinner?" She said, "We're having brain tonight." I said, "I don't need to ask if we've had that before. You can have brain tonight."
Did you
I was,
actually try it though?
no, I didn't. I was still a young kid.
Yeah.
I would love to try it now. I mean, it
It,
would be
you know,
incredible.
it's I have not I've only had it in powdered, freeze dried form,
Okay.
but it's
Yeah.
actually sweet. It kind of
Yeah.
has like have you ever had is it what's that powder that is it maca? Yeah, I think MACCA. Yeah. It kind of has a maca taste to it.
Wasn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks like maca as well. It's kind of like that very creamy vanilla looking color, but it's slightly sweet as well. And so we're going to add it with cinnamon, and we're going to be putting out cinnamon brain. And I am so excited for it, because I really believe, so I'm a big believer in like supports like, that the part of the animal you're eating, it has the nutrients to support that
Yeah.
organ, and it's going to then
Yeah.
support that organ in you.
Right.
As you know, like there's CoQ10 in heart. Well, what's in most heart cardiovascular supplements? CoQ10. So you eat heart, it's going to support your heart. Well, I know that it's not an exact correlation, the fact that we have more dementia and Alzheimer's, but I do think it's interesting that our ancestors, meaning our great grandparents, and for some people our grandparents, they ate brain.
Oh
If you
yeah,
grew
that's
up on a
true.
farm or near a farm, you ate brain. You usually had it with your eggs in the morning or something like that, right? And isn't it interesting that we now have a higher we now we can't even get access to brain. So most people didn't, like, no one's really eating it. And we have a higher case of Alzheimer's and dementia. Now I know that it's not a direct correlation, but I have to wonder, going with this like supports like concept, if we were eating it, if it might help to offset some of the toxic issues that are contributing to these things.
That's a great and noble objective. What's behind when you step back and study the the Merck Manual, and that's the Bible of allopathic medicine. There's 20,000 different conditions laid out in that manual. And what's hard to fathom is that they all begin with the same mechanism, oxidative stress.
Mm.
And the way we make energy in our body is we need to activate oxygen. And that word activate means we're going to add electrons and add hydrogen protons and turn it into water. And that's literally what releases energy in our body. And all of these 20,000 symptoms originate with oxidative stress. But it's not my theory. I don't want you to think, well, it's, I had this dream. No, this is the work of Douglas Wallace, who is a very gifted geneticist and biologist at Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania. He should get a Nobel Prize within his lifetime. And he's the one who developed this phrase, cellular energy deficiency. And he admonishes his clinical peers for not understanding where the origin of the problem is. And that's really what the key is. And again, we're back to the organs being so important, and they are very energy dependent. So your model perfectly aligns with how the body heals itself, and it's just an ongoing objective of getting people to incorporate that in their diet, which I think that's it will always be part of your ongoing headache of growing the business, is getting enough people to make that change. Let me ask you one more quick question before we begin to wrap up. And I really have enjoyed this. I hope we can
Me
have
as well.
a subsequent conversation. What I really want to do is see if I can, on one of my trips to Boston, get you to cook a meal for my family. That would be an experience.
That would be fun. We'll have to make that happen.
Yeah, but I know you spent some time with celebrities, and we don't need to get into the names of people that you've worked with, but you've been an A-lister chef for a lot of impressive people. I'm wondering, do they understand the problem of the food system? Or is it just not part of their consciousness? And I'm just curious to know whether their visibility, their intellect, their influence could become a force to broaden the awareness of what we've been talking about.
That is a really intriguing question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. I think it. Gosh, how do I answer that? I think in many ways celebrities are no different than us. They're just as confused and they're just as overwhelmed with information. The difference is they just have more money to throw at the problem. So they're able to bring in all these other experts who are going to suggest to them, this is what you should follow. But most celebrities are ping-ponging to different experts, just like most people.
Yeah.
And so what you have then when you ping pong like that is you have someone that's kind of yo-yoing between their health of like, well, let me try this. Oh, this didn't work. Let me go back to what, this. And they just keep trying different things. Consistency is not necessarily a term that's thrown around a lot in Hollywood, right? Maybe not in any life these days. But what you do find, though, is similar to your experience with Weston A. Price, is every now and then you will have a celebrity that lobs on to something that you or I believe in. Because that's really what we're asking, right? Is there someone out there that's going to fall into our beliefs of health?
Right.
And ultimately, I find that's the situation I'm constantly, kind of navigating with people is, well, what is my belief of health versus what's your experience or belief? And is there a connection? Are you at a place where you're curious about mine? Am I still curious about yours? Can we have a discussion and can we move our needles together? I find that a lot of times when, not always, but a lot of times there are celebrities that think that they already know what works or doesn't work. And more cases than not, they're wrong usually. But who am I to judge though? It's not, it's not my place. But I do believe that no matter what path anyone is on around their health, the best thing that we can do is give them the dignity of their process. Obviously, you know that, obviously, but then also to stay the course on our beliefs and to really live and be in our beliefs, because we have to be the model for what our belief of health is, so that people know about it and are exposed about it. Because that's the other thing that I find is one of the biggest limiters of anyone's awareness in life is, what is your contrast? We have to have a contrast. Like, you had to get sick, you had to get that frozen shoulder to then learn about this new modality. I had to get that kidney stone to then learn about how food affects. Like, we need contrast to grow. If we don't have contrast, why would we change?
Yeah, exactly right. You sail the boat. You sail when you're sailing. You're sailing into the wind. Right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. You need something, and so I'm always for, like, I learned this early on out of culinary school. So I was learning about nutrition in culinary school, and I was so excited. And I would go to these, I was in New York going to culinary school, and I would go to these parties sometimes, and I'd be like, oh, do you know about this with the agricultural system? And do you know this and that? And I would just share all the things I was learning. And the person would they would lose the smile on their face, and they would look at me very seriously and just said, well, thanks a lot, man. You just ruined food for me. Like, I now don't know what to eat. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, and I didn't, and they said, so how should I eat? And I didn't have a solution then, because I was more just learning about the problem. I didn't know the solution then. And so I quickly learned, like, you don't volunteer stuff until someone asks. And once they ask, that means then they're open to hearing a different answer than what they already know.
And you better have a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've lived that drama very, very intimately, and share your insight. Well, James, this has been phenomenal. I salute you as a warrior, but you have an intuitive sense about what's right, what's wrong, and you've introduced the world to a very innovative way to take their daily meal uptown. No smoke alarms involved, right? But I look forward to seeing how we can continue the dialogue, but also seeing how we can support each other. The little research scientist in me wants to do a blood test on you to find out what your 51-year-old body looks like inside. I'll follow up with you on the side for that, because I think you will be fascinated at what you would learn in that process. And I think the goal here is just to get more people to be aware of the ease with which we can improve our daily diet, and get more people to be aware of the fact that regaining energy is not that complicated. That
I love that.
We've come up with what we think is a very straightforward cure for that, for the fatigue. And I look forward to seeing how we can work together going forward.
I welcome it as well. And I really appreciate, like I said, you having me on and helping to amplify this message of that these foods that people think of as scary don't have to be, and that we can really look to our food to get nutrients that we previously didn't think we could. And because we've lost that knowledge, right? We've lost the culinary knowledge. We think they're icky. We don't know how to source them. And so I appreciate you helping to spread that message of, like, no, it's possible. And here's a source.
So how do people learn about Pluck? How do they get a hold of you? What are the points of contact going forward?
So you can learn more about Pluck at our website. It's eatpluck.com. And notice it has the eat in it, because we're all about eating your nutrients. Which I'm a big fan of. And then you can find us on Amazon as well. We sell there. And then we're on socials at Eat Pluck as well. And I'm at Chef James Berry.
At Chef James Berry. Wonderful. Well, again, thank you for taking the time, and really enjoyed your whole perspective of solving a very thorny problem with a very innovative way.
If that interview made you hungry and you'd like to try James Berry's Pluck gourmet seasonings for yourself with an RCP 15% discount, look in the show notes for the affiliate links. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it does help the RCP out a little bit. We also have a product directory which lists all of the supplements and other products that the RCP has personally investigated and vetted. In fact, if you were to look down and search for Pluck, you would find all of his seasonings. And there it is. So, bon appetit.